Welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily, or La Movie Mija. I'm a part-time filmmaker, full-time movie lover, and today I herald some civility in the comments because we're talking about Fantastic Four first steps, and anytime I make superhero content, people get weird and mean. So let's be respectful all around, not just towards me, but to each other, especially because you might not like what I have to say. If you haven't seen the film, this video will be full of spoilers, so do yourself a favor, save this video for later, go watch the movie, come back, and we can talk. And if you subscribe to my channel, you can get one new movie review from me every single week. And for even more movie news, reviews, and personal insights, you can follow me at Movie Mija on TikTok, Instagram, and Letterboxd. I'm really excited to talk about this one, so let's get into it. Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, and The Thing face their most daunting challenge yet as they defend Earth from Galactus and Silver Surfer. The film is directed by Matt Shakman and it stars Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Eben Moss-Bachrach, Julia Garner, Ralph Ineson, and so many more. The first thing to know about Fantastic Four First Steps is you don't need to know a lot going into this movie. It is really accessible. Unlike other MCU entries, it isn't a film that has a whole list of prerequisite watching. The trade-off of that accessibility, however, is that the film begins with a montage to introduce the characters, and I'm disappointed to say that this is where you're going to see the bulk of their powers in action. I feel like a lot of these big franchise films just don't know where to start. Do we start in media res in the middle of the action? Do we start from the beginning? Do we need to give them a montage to get the audience up to speed? To me, that communicates a sense of insecurity, not because I'm against a montage. I love a well-placed montage, don't get me wrong. But in this instance, it just feels like they don't really trust the audience to understand these characters and their powers. And there's a lot riding on that montage because it's not only introducing us to the characters, but it's also introducing us to Earth 828, distinguishing itself from the sacred timeline of Earth 616 that we know from Iron Man, Avengers, Ms. Marvel, etc. On the contrary, getting to see Reed and Sue find out that they're pregnant after years of trying and seeing how the other members of the Fantastic Four react to that news is so much more interesting than just getting dumped into a montage. On the plus side for the montage is that we are in Earth 828, so we are getting a retro-futuristic New York City, and it's dazzling. It makes the montage exposition dump so much more enjoyable because of it, because at least we get to see the world. And that same styling influenced the brassy orchestration of Michael Giacchino's score, and I cannot stop singing that Fantastic Four chant. It sounds ridiculous when I'm by myself, but I really wish I was in a choir so we could harmonize together. And the music really sells you on the distinct world, and it makes the swells of the biggest moments in the film just hit with such grandiosity. But I think we rely a little bit too much on that score. We'll get to that later. In equal measure, however, the chemistry amongst the principal cast is terrific. Because this isn't a run-of-the-mill origin story, it makes for a rather interesting entry point to get to know this version of Marvel's First Family. Now let's talk a little bit about the characters, because what they're dealing with internally is in stark contrast to the bright, joyful, and poppy worlds that we are led to believe that this all exists in. Pedro Pascal plays Reed Richards on the precipice of fatherhood with such fear and trepidation. He is incredibly intelligent to a fault. It's like an actual detriment to his happiness because he's forced to grapple with the worst scenarios that his brilliant mind can muster in order to find a way of preventing those awful things from happening. He's also very riddled with guilt, feeling ownership over the incident that led the crew to getting their powers in and becoming fantastic. So you have a man who's about to enter this new era of fatherhood already feeling so insecure in his ability to take care of others because of what happened to the Fantastic Four. Then you have Ben Grimm, who is also haunted by his new reality as the Thing. Not too dissimilar from his character on The Bear, Eben Moss-Bachrach has a laugh so I don't cry quality about him. He's the character who spends the most time outside of the Fantastic Four building. He's visiting his old neighborhood where he grew up, and he's pining over a criminally underutilized Natasha Lyonne. I will say though, those sequences were very effective because my heart broke for him. We even get to see glimpses of him catching his reflection, and seeing the way that he is looking at himself and perceiving himself is just devastating. Then you have cool guy Johnny Storm, and he is easily a fan favorite. My theater was oohing and awing and fawning over the man, and it's so easy to see why. He's charming and goofy, but with big little brother vibes. But he's also so good intentioned, clearly caring about his family, even though he can be so nonchalant about it. Rounding out the principal four cast is Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, and I think she is given the most responsibility in this film. She feels like the glue of the family. She's a respected diplomat in the public eye, but at home, she's often the voice of heart and reason. And she has some big moments in this film. From the epic space birthing scene, that was simply gorgeous. To her rallying speech outside the Fantastic Four building, to her heroic standoff going toe-to-toe with Galactus. I mean, what can't women do? I'm not too familiar with the Fantastic Four, so I'm curious if anybody knows how comic accurate the use of their powers on display is in this film. Is Sue Storm really that strong? Because damn. Speaking of which, let's talk about our villain and anti-hero Galactus and Shalabal, or Silver Surfer, respectfully. Galactus is so focused on his quest to simply feed, and it is menacing. This is not a villain you can negotiate with, nor is he something even the world's most brilliant minds can comprehend. The scale of Galactus and his laser-focused goal of either consuming Earth or taking baby Franklin is jarring in its simplicity. I found Julia Garner's performance of Silver Surfer to be so fascinating. She really nailed it. I love how much the weight of her past transgressions against other planets aiding Galactus in his quest to quench his hunger is so evident in Garner's performance. That is, until we get a montage. A montage that later kind of just takes the wind out of her menacing sails. I really could have done without it because I think it too heavily telegraphs that she is going to sway in favor of Earth 828 in the final act. Once we got that flashback with her outside of the polymer Silver Surfer coating that she had, I was like, okay, well, now she's really humanized, and now I can see that where this movie is going. I felt like it was too predictable, and I didn't like that we got to see her before she became Silver Surfer. It was already so effective seeing her break down after hearing all of those audio recordings that Johnny Storm was presenting to her in the middle of New York City Times Square. Like, why did they give us that montage? While we're speaking of sacrifice, let's break down the central conflict of the film, because here's where I had the most issues. The story is simple. Galactus wants the Earth or the baby. Reed Richards confesses this to the general public, causing them to turn on the once beloved team. Now the Fantastic Four must find a way to unite all of humanity because only together as a planet can they evade their fate from Galactus. As a concept, that is fucking rad. That is really cool. And talk about stakes. But in execution, we spend absolutely no time seeing the Fantastic Four unite an entire world to give them the resources that they need to build the launching pads for their teleportation plan, let alone to get everybody on Earth to abide by the strict electricity power conservation that they need so that they can operate those launch pads. I mentioned Sue Storm had that rousing speech outside of the tower, but she was talking to like 100 people. Didn't hit as much as I wanted it to. Like, that moment didn't feel as impactful as I wanted it to. And like, once we moved past it and then everyone just kind of sprang into action, I was disappointed with how we got there. How am I supposed to believe that she mobilized the entire world when there is a whole fractured society of underground dwellers who hate sunshiners? Setting that aside, the threat of Galactus wanting to take baby Franklin is simple, and I admire that. But the third act showdown just felt too similar to like a Fast and the Furious like setup. I also really love the dynamic of the Fantastic Four characters. They fight and they argue and they challenge each other, but there is an undeniable respect and love that they have. I love seeing representations of family that can challenge one another without crossing the line, finding ways to navigate difficult conversations without sacrificing respect for one another or turning a corner that you can't come back from. It's healthy to see a family that can rise together in that way. Overall, Fantastic Four is a standout amongst the usual MCU offerings as of late because its setting, because of its theming. It's dazzling and exciting at times, but it suffers from an uneven balance of joy and desperation. So as much as I may have enjoyed watching the film this first time, I don't know if I can picture myself running back to it like I would, say, Superman, for example. Not because necessarily a movie has to feel good for me to want to go back to it, but it just didn't have any big cathartic moments I felt that had me yearning to revisit that experience. But I will absolutely have that soundtrack on repeat. On the Movie Mija meter, I give Fantastic Four First Steps a 3.5 out of 5 stars. But what did you think about Fantastic Four? Is this the definitive Fantastic Four movie, or are you hoping that they're going to reboot it in like 10 years time? Let me know in the comments below. Okay, that's all for now. By the time you're watching this video, I will be at San Diego Comic-Con, so if you want to see what I'm up to, go check me out at Movie Mija on Instagram and TikTok. And I'll see you next time. Bye!